We've already seen a little bit of the difference between posts and pages, but I want to go into that a bit more now and talk about how you use that when you're strategizing about how to organize your client's material in WordPress. Now, I know in one sense a client ought to know how their material should be organized, but you know more often than not you're called on to help out if not do it completely. So it's an important skill to have, and if you're going to be working with WordPress, you want to know how best to organize the material physically in WordPress, what to use for each kind of content. So we have our posts versus our pages. Posts, of course, are really just small bits of content that are numerous and will continue to be added and need to be organized as they're added. So for example, I've got a category called site design, and I have little topics in site design, and I'm going to keep adding more and more topics, of course, but I wouldn't want a whole page just about the trend to right sidebars because I'm maybe just making a quick comment on it or linking to some important article. So those are perfect candidates for posts. Pages, of course, are more general, larger pieces of content that don't change much, that there aren't going to be many of them. So there's really only going to be one About Us page, of course, that sort of thing. Let's see how this plays out on a real website and talk about how we might organize things. Clearly, an About page, this makes a lot of sense to be a page in WordPress. We don't need to categorize it. We don't need to connect it with other kinds of content particularly. We might have sub-pages as we do here, and that's okay. They're related, but we don't have a lot of them. So that's the difference. Instead of making each of these posts, we would make each of those pages. Same with services. You're going to maybe add some services down the road or delete some services, but they're not changing all the time, and you're not adding to them or making new services. So those are good as pages. Now, projects, of course, there's a potential for posts because you're going to add new projects as you go along. You might want to organize projects in a particular way. And let's take a look at how powerful this can be. So let's suppose you had put all projects onto a single page. And in fact, that's what we saw over here is we had all the projects, big long list of them, including images. That's a lot for a client to have to work with on a WordPress page. So that doesn't seem very logical to do in WordPress. We could make each project its own page. And notice what I've done here is I've said, well, let's take all the testimonials about this one project and put them together, because if we have all testimonials on a single page, as we did in this example here, right? Again, that problem of organizing and putting all material. I mean, I'm not even going into the SEO issues involved in this right now. This is just from a client standpoint. How easy is it to manage? So if I put each project on a single page and included just the testimonials about it, that would help a bit, but it's still a lot for the client to be working with. It's also not very flexible, and that's really, I think, the important thing about this strategy is what are you going to need down the road, and how easy will it be to manipulate your content? Look at this. If we make each project a post, for example, we could categorize projects. Similarly, if each testimonial is a single post, there's a lot we can do with it then. We can connect them to a particular project. We could, 6 months down the road, for example, decide, wouldn't it be great to have all plumbing testimonials together? So you just add a new category, put the relevant ones into that category. Suddenly you have a whole list of plumbing testimonials. Or if you wanted to have revolving testimonials on a sidebar, you could do it because they're each individual posts. It's that flexibility that really is important. And that's where posts, if you need to be able to do things like that, posts become very important. For pages, you don't need that flexibility. The material that goes in a page wouldn't need that flexibility. So again, that's another criteria for deciding whether to use pages. Now, there is some flexibility with pages in terms of organization. If we look right here, you'll notice that I've created a sub-page of website services. And I could have a whole list underneath here of all the different services. Now, why is that handy? Well, on the one hand, it's visually helpful to say this is our group of services under here, these pages. As far as menus are concerned, it's not that big an issue anymore because you can organize menus however you want. There's total flexibility with them. So you don't have to have said this is a sub-page or child page of this other one, because you could just do that yourself in the menu. However, where it is handy, and we'll see this as we work with themes more and more, if this is a sub-page of services, there are template tags I can use to actually redirect and say, use this template, this look, for, say, website design. I could have a whole area of the site called website design or a whole area called services, and any sub-pages automatically would take that same template. So there's value in creating sub-pages and gives you some organization for the site. All right, that's a brief overview of posts and pages. I will say briefly, there is another feature of WordPress called custom post types. The name's a little bit misleading because they're not actually posts, they're content types. And we've only talked about posts and pages, but potentially down the road you could create your own new types of content in WordPress, and we'll get into that in other videos.